All right. Hi, everyone. How are we doing? Let's see. So I am Elizabeth, and I'm going to be helping moderate this experience. We have Emily, our animal expert, is going to be telling us about the animals in our touch tank.
Hi all, I'm Emily, live from the Science Center. I'm gonna keep my camera focused on the animals and the touch tank, so you'll just see my arms for today.
All right, well, as people keep coming in, I know a lot of you have been with us before. I see some familiar names, so that's awesome. But just in case you haven't used Zoom before, I'm gonna give a quick intro to Zoom so you kind of know what some of the controls are. First of all, if you go down into the lower left-hand corner of your screen, you'll see a little microphone where you can mute and unmute yourself. So while we're talking, if you want to make sure that we're not hearing your background noise, you can stay muted. If you have a question or something and you want to chat with us, you can unmute and then we can all hear you that way. If you want to show your video, right next to that microphone is a little video camera button, and so you can turn your video on or off. So if there's something that you wanted to show us on your end, you could turn your video on. Otherwise, you can turn it off, and that's fine too. If you want to make sure that the video that you're seeing throughout this whole time is Emily's video with the touch tank animals, if you find her video on the top bar, if you're in the speaker view, or you can just find it in the gallery as well. I'm gonna unmute Emily so she can say something so you can all find her.
Hi everyone, my camera's focused on a sea star and a whelk with some mummichogs swimming through our field of view.
All right, so if you're in the gallery view, then you can find that sea star video, and there will be 3 little dots in the upper hand corner. You can click on that, and then there's an option that says pin video. And so if you pin that video, then that means that's the video that you'll see big the whole time while we're doing this so that you don't miss any of the animals. And then we will be recording this. So if you say something, you will be recorded, but the recording will only be on the video of Emily's screen, so you don't have to worry about being on camera or anything like that. Now, we would really like to call on you if you have something to say. So if you want to change your name, you can rename yourself in that same place where you were able to pin a video on your own video. You can rename yourself, and that way I can call on you by name and invite you to share your question if you had a question, or an answer if Emily is asking a question. Another thing you can do is also down along the bottom bar of your screen, there will be a chat box. And so if you have a question, you can type it into the chat, and that way we can all see it. Or in the participants area, there will be one where you can see view participants. You could then raise your hand. There's a way to do that too. So then that way I will know that you have something to say, and I can make sure that you're unmuted so you can chat with us. All right, so with that, I think we'll go ahead and turn it over to Emily and let her introduce you to all our cool touch tank creatures.
Awesome, thank you so much, Elizabeth. I'm really excited to be here on Zoom with everyone this morning. I am coming to you live from the Science Center because I am here, or somebody else from our animal care team is here every day to feed our animals. And while you guys might have had your breakfast already, it is feeding time at the touch tank. So I'm gonna start off by giving our animals their daily dose of mysis shrimp. So I'm putting into the water these little frozen shrimp. You're gonna see our mummichogs, who are our greediest touch tank inhabitants, coming to eat. So these mummichogs are also called Atlantic killifish. They like to hang out in brackish water, so where freshwater streams meet the ocean. Now, our touch tank is full ocean salinity, but the mummichogs do just fine in here as well. In fact, our mummichogs are a little bit larger than the ones you might see in the wild because they are very well fed. This touch tank mimics an Atlantic Ocean habitat. So if you've been here to the Science Center, you know it's a fairly shallow pool. All of the animals we're going to meet today would live in the tidal zone of the Gulf of Maine. So if you have access to a map at home, it's kind of cool to spend some time later on tracing our watershed all the way to the Atlantic Ocean. So you can actually follow the streams and creeks in Ithaca, where the Science Center is located, all the way out to the ocean where we would find these animals. So we're really connected through our water to all of the animals we're going to meet today. So you saw our Atlantic killifish, our mummichogs.
Yeah, I can see.
Is that a question? All right, I'll keep going. We're also going to take a look at some horseshoe crabs. So in my hand is a horseshoe crab. A lot of people see this and they think stingray, which makes sense. It's got the similar tail. It's kind of a similar shape. Stingrays are related to sharks. These horseshoe crabs are actually not even crabs. They're more closely related to things like spiders and scorpions on land. But they have been around since before the time of dinosaurs. So horseshoe crabs are super ancient, super well adapted. They have this lovely hard shell to protect them in the shallow water from above. They have this tail, which is not a stinger, but it helps them flip over if they get turned upside down.
To the top.
I know I'm unmuted.
This one's not going to do it for us right now, but it will eventually. We have 4 adult horseshoe crabs in the touch tank right now. 3 of them are male. You can tell
They can't see. Yeah,
from the front
my thing. It doesn't let me.
pinchers here. So these look like boxing gloves. That means this is a male. On the females, they look the same as all the other ones. I'm going to take a moment. We're going to feed this horseshoe crab. So I need you all to watch closely and let me know where the mouth is. Where does this food disappear into? I'm giving it a small chunk of silver side, so a little chunk of fish.
Okay, well, that should be feeding him.
Can everyone see? So I'm offering some fish. Let's see. Here it goes, waking up, grabbing on. Where was the mouth?
Oh, that's cool.
That's cool.
Should I feed another one?
you.
That mouth is right in the center of their underside.
I was muted.
This means that while they walk along the ocean floor, they can use those little front pinchers to grab detritus, to grab tasty dead things off the bottom. Does anyone have like a Roomba vacuum cleaner, a robotic vacuum cleaner at home?
Yeah.
Yeah, I kind of think of it a little bit like that. These guys just cruising along the bottom, picking up good stuff to eat and stuffing it right into their mouths there. On the underside of this, you can also see it looks a little scorpion spiderish, right? Less like a crab. So we can understand that they're more like arachnids than crabs. You'll also see this breathing apparatus back here. So this fan-like thing on the back part of their body, they move water through there and they're able to filter out oxygen. Horseshoe crabs have blue blood, unlike people, because the molecule that carries oxygen in their blood is based in copper rather than ours, which is hemoglobin.
Like sharks, do they always have to keep moving?
They can rest. So actually, that's a really good question. Often, our horseshoe crabs and many of our other touch tank inhabitants will bury themselves in the sand and stay quite still. Does anyone have an idea why they might do that?
To hide, camouflage.
Yeah, to hide, right? And it makes them really hard to spot from predators. So again, we're thinking about animals that are living in very shallow water. And so they want to be able to hide from things up above. And the sand is a really good way to do that.
Like, what are their predators?
But birds, like any larger fish things that could eat them. Horseshoe crabs are sorry?
Like dolphins, do they have to get air from the surface?
Nope. So that's another good question. You're going to notice that I'm keeping all of our touch tank critters fully submerged in the water. They are not mammals. They don't breathe air from the surface. I guess turtles do that as well, but all these guys live fully submerged, and they have different ways to get their oxygen from the water, like fish.
It looks like Jen King has a question too.
How long do these crabs live?
That's another great question. We're not actually sure about the individual lifespan of a horseshoe crab. I've seen things ranging from 20 to 40 years. But for critters that have been around for so long, we actually know sort of a surprisingly small amount about them.
Do they hatch from eggs?
Yeah.
Yep. And I'm holding here a pretty young one, a juvenile horseshoe crab. So much smaller.
So cute.
Yeah, you can see that it's sort of fully formed, but it has lots of growing to do. So as they grow, they molt their shells. So if you're ever at the beach, you might find horseshoe crab molts. That means it's not a dead crab. It's one that has left its old shell behind so that it can grow larger. Horseshoe crabs have kind of a miraculous immune system. So they are really, really good at fighting off infections and bacteria and things like that. And so humans actually use horseshoe crab blood to help test different medical fluids for infections and for bacteria.
Do they have like eyes and like I know they have mouths, but do they have eyes and like noses?
Yeah, so we saw that mouth on the bottom. They do have eyes. They actually have 10 eyes, but they're not eyes like ours. So there's these 2 eyes in the front that maybe you can see. Those are compound eyes, like insect eyes. And then they also have a bunch of light sensors, more like what sea stars have, that can sort of sense light and dark and which way is up. They have one of those on the tip of their tail. They have some more on the bottom, on their underside. Oh, sorry, my assistant has seen something out the window. Gets very excited about the touch tank. Other horseshoe crab questions?
Why are they called horseshoe crabs?
Why are they called horseshoe crabs? So Elizabeth is our resident horse expert, but has anyone ever seen a horse hoof?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can you imagine this as a horse hoof attached to a horse's leg? It looks a little bit like a horseshoe.
That would be weird.
It would be really, really weird. That would be a whole different type of animal. But I think people saw these and they reminded them of a horseshoe shape.
Mommy, do I have to listen to this?
Awesome.
Do I have to listen to this?
So,
any other horseshoe crab questions before we move on to our sea stars?
No.
All right. Sea stars it is.
all right, I'm holding up one of our sea stars now so that you guys can see the underside. And you'll notice it was hanging onto a shell. So sea stars have these tube feet on the bottom. They use them to hunt and move around and hang on to the rocks. Why would a sea star want to hang on to the rocks?
So it won't drift away.
Yeah, that's a really good thought. So they live in sort of wavy environments. A lot of them make their home in tide pools and things like that, and they don't want to get washed out into the open ocean where they would be a really nice snack for something. So they use their tube feet to anchor onto the rocks. They also use them to hold on to shells so that they can eat what's inside. A sea star's mouth is right in the center on the underside of all its legs here.
How do sea stars eat?
That is a great question. So sea stars eat in a really awesome and peculiar way. Instead of putting food into their mouths, they spit their stomach outside of their mouth. They envelop whatever their food is. So if this sea star were going to eat, say, a mussel, it would go on its tippy toes over the mussel, hold it in place, eject its stomach, and then all the enzymes, the things that you have in your stomach to dissolve food as well, they would dissolve the good fleshy part of that mussel, and then the sea star would suck the stomach back in with all the nutrients and good stuff inside.
What does it do? What are predators?
Sea star predators, again, would be birds, larger fish, probably, especially when they're dead.
Can starfish eat out, or not eat, live out of water?
No, that's a good question. So they can't survive outside of water very long. They do dry out. Sea stars circulate seawater through their circulatory system, so that helps them move and regulate pressure within their bodies. That's what this orange dot is for. That's a valve.
It looks like we have a question from Nova and Klonoa. You were raising your hand?
I don't have a question.
Okay.
How long does it take for a sea star's limbs to grow back?
That's a really good question, and I actually don't know how long that regeneration process takes. I've never seen it happen myself. Elizabeth, do you know?
So, from what I know, it depends a lot on how much food the sea star is getting.
Yeah.
So if they are eating a lot of food, then they can grow their limb back faster. If they're not getting as much food, then it's going to take a long time.
Are sea stars and horseshoe crabs enemies?
They seem to get along okay in our tank. I don't think they're enemies per se. They might eat each other if the other one were already dead and they could scavenge something off of there. But
How long do sea stars live?
I also don't know that. I think it depends on the species. These are all really good questions that you could look up at home as well.
I saw one more hand up. It says Rachel's iPad. Did you have a question?
We do have a question.
Well, I didn't want to say a question. I just wanted to know if you have Christine's kids on. If you don't, Nikki. I would like to talk to them.
Well, they're on too, Gabe, but this is for asking a question. You could ask a question about the tank, about starfishes.
I made a tank.
It's hard. Who cleans the tank? How often does it have to be cleaned?
Oh, that's a great question. So we do pretty regular maintenance on our tank and all of our live collection systems here. This tank is really well set up so that it filters the water out. There's a whole series of pipes in the back. We have a skimmer that pulls the gross stuff out of the water, and then we're able to empty that off. And then we sort of pick up detritus and things as needed. We clean poop out every day from the horseshoe crabs, things like that. Most of our aquariums get a water change once a week.
All right, looks like we have a couple more hands up. Kavan, I'm not sure how to pronounce that one. I see your hand.
She starts moving away pretty quickly with those tube feet.
Simran, I see your hand.
So could you keep a starfish as a pet?
No. So we have some very special permits to be able to keep our animals at the Science Center. I think it would be really hard in your home to create the environment that a sea star needs to be really happy and healthy.
Would you keep a horseshoe crab as a pet?
Oh, no. I think you'd need like a really, really big sandy tank. One thing that a lot of people do keep as pets are hermit crabs. So we have some hermit crabs in here. There are terrestrial hermit crabs that live on land. These are aquatic, so they live in the ocean. But a lot of people do choose to keep hermit crabs as pets. They're a little bit smaller and easier to satisfy.
My sister had 2 hermit crabs as pets.
Yeah. Did they live on land or in water?
Land.
Land, yeah, those terrestrial ones. And hermit crabs are interesting because they don't make their own shells, so you do need to provide larger shells for them to move into as they grow.
All right, I think we had a question from the screen labeled Kayla.
Yeah. Did you know why these are a type of like things that kind of grip onto rocks in the sea, and they're very rare, and they are white, and it's kind of like a barnacle, but it's different. It's like it's like a hammer kind of thing. It's like it's a hammer coral.
Oh, it's a type of coral.
All right, it looks like we also have a question from
That's
Sophia.
awesome. I love corals. They're super fascinating. Sophia, let's hear it.
What type of sea star is that?
Sorry?
What type of sea star is that?
Oh, these are called Forbes sea stars. So Forbes. So if you want to look them up and learn more about lifespan and diet and all of that and how long it takes to regenerate limbs, you can take a look at Forbes sea stars. We'll give you some research to do after the call.
Can sea stars be like skinny or fat, or like their limbs? Can they be like skinny or fat?
So certainly they can have more or less food available, and that will impact their size. They do circulate seawater through their system, so they can plump themselves up or let some of that out and be a little bit skinnier and looser, if that makes sense.
All right, Jen King, I see your hand.
I was wondering, how do the sea stars like mate?
How do they mate?
Yeah.
So often we will have sort of a cloud of stuff in our touch tank.
Question.
They release gametes into the water. It looks like mucus. Gross. But pretty cool.
All right, it looks like Nova and Quinoa has a question.
Did you name them?
We don't tend to name our animals here at the Science Center. We think of them not so much as pets, but as representatives of their species. So we like to call them whatever they are given as a species.
All right, and then I have a hand up for Caramel Mocha at Gmail.
All right. I have one more critter to show you all, but feel free to keep asking questions about anything. Was that a question?
How do stingrays eat?
Stingrays? So are we talking about horseshoe crabs like the ones we have here, or stingrays like in the ocean?
Stingrays in the ocean.
Stingrays in the ocean. So stingrays have a mouth under their flap as well. And they can hunt. A lot of stingrays will use their tail to stab prey.
All right, looks like we also have a question from Saya and Emma.
How many times do you feed the animals a day?
Awesome. So they get mysis shrimp every morning. You guys saw me feed that at the beginning, those tiny little shrimps. They get these fish that I'm feeding. We dump those into the tank 3 or 4 times a week. And then once a week, our tank gets a batch of bivalves. So mussels and clams and things that everything in the tank really enjoys breaking open and eating.
Do they ever like feed themselves?
Yeah, so actually we do have some things in here that generally get eaten pretty quickly. We have periwinkle snails. So all of these little shells in here used to be snails that lived along the outer walls of the touch tank, but they've been eaten. We also keep some other snails in here called moon snails, which not only get eaten by other tank inhabitants, but tend to eat each other. So we cycle through those. It's just like out in the wild, kind of a hard life to be a snail. This is a really big snail called a channeled whelk. This is something that a person might eat if you could get at this fleshy part. They make their own shells, these big, beautiful shells.
How do they make them?
It's calcium deposits. So they usually start at this swirly part and then they grow outward from there. They have the fleshy bit, this part to explore, and then this little trapdoor piece is hard to protect it from the bottom. It's called an operculum. These guys tend to bury themselves in the sand as well. When they hunt, they will mound their flesh over, and they have a drilling mouth part, so they can drill through the shells of other snails or clams or prey to eat the inside.
Have you guys ever made a shell for like one of the animals?
We were looking into trying to 3D print some shells for our hermit crab. Typically, most of our animals make their own shells, so the only animals that switch shells are the hermit crabs. If you look, you can Google hermit crab shells. There's an artist that makes these really beautiful glass shells that hermit crabs will move into.
That's cool.
Yeah. All right. Those are the animals I wanted to show you all today, just so you can stay in touch with our touch tank. It will be here for you so that you can come feel and hang out with these animals when we reopen. Does anyone have any final questions? Just
What
had a
animals do you have in there besides horseshoe crabs and the snails and shellfish and the starfish?
Yeah. So we have the mummichogs, the fish that we saw at the beginning. There are a number of types of like sea worms that live in here, things that we don't necessarily want in here, but have made their home here, particularly bristle worms. We also sometimes have some different crab species in here, like spider crabs. We don't have any of those right now, but they have lived here in the past.
Do you have any blue crabs?
Moon snails? Oh, blue crabs? We
Yeah.
don't have blue crabs in here, no.
I think
We
Rachel's
have some-
iPad had a question.
Have people been catching these creatures?
Yeah, so our touch tank, we have some permits to collect these animals from the ocean, so usually from the Cape Cod area. Most of our animals at the Science Center, our reptiles in particular, and a lot of our frogs were bred in human care. So they have been in captivity their whole lives. They're not from the wild.
Do you have any like mammals or amphibians?
We have a lot of amphibians here. We have a lot of different types of frogs and newts and things. We don't have any mammals except for my lovely assistant, Io, who is a dog, and you can see him on the Science Center Facebook page.
Looks like we have a question from Kayla.
Do you have any like crabs that kind of live under like rocks?
So our spider crabs that we sometimes have are really good camouflage artists. They don't necessarily live under rocks, but they look a lot like rocks.
But some of them actually live out in the wild in grass, and that's actually really true.
Sorry? Can you repeat that?
Some crabs actually live out in the grass, and they live under rocks like blue crabs.
Like blue crabs, yeah. Lots of different strategies for animals to survive and thrive. Giving you a little tour of the tank. Did you guys see that wave come out?
Yeah.
So that's our water that's been filtered.
For the animals that live in the wild, like for like the starfish, like where would they live?
Yeah, so these are all shallow tidal zone animals. So they would live sort of near the beach. Sea stars you'll often find in tide pools. So they get, when the tide comes up, it creates little pools and it washes out, and there's some water left behind. So it would look a lot like this tide pool touch tank, nestled between rocks on the beach.
Do you have any arachnids?
We don't currently have arachnids here, no. No spiders. Our beautiful mural.
Do you have any real birds?
Nope. Just reptiles, amphibians, fish. I'm walking you over to our, there's Io, our anemone tank. So next to our touch tank, we have anemones. And
Are they real anemones?
yep. And do you see that clownfish?
Yeah.
That's our female clownfish. And her mate, the male, is in there.
The female kind of looks like she has lipstick on.
She does. She does not have lipstick on. She does look like she has lipstick on. They have a flower pot in there because they sometimes lay eggs into that flower pot. People have seen Finding Nemo, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Clownfish are really cool because they're able to change their sex. So the larger female typically sort of patrols the nest. So they live in these anemones. The male would guard the eggs and the young really up close, and the female would be swimming out and keeping watch for predators. That means that it's pretty dangerous to be a female clownfish, so they sometimes get eaten. And at that point, the male becomes the female and starts to patrol the surrounding water.
All right, it looks like Saya and Emma has a question.
How did you put the flower pot in the tank?
We can reach into our tanks and drop them in. We need to have access to be able to clean anyway.
Looks like Sophia has a question. No? Not a, okay. All right, Simran has a question.
Like when the female sees a predator, how does she alert the male?
That's a great question that I am not sure about the answer to. If you are able to find that answer, could you share it with us on Facebook?
Maybe.
Do you know, Elizabeth?
I don't know how they would, how they.
I don't know exactly what they do to try to fight off the predator or alert.
Are the anemones like the ones that sting?
Yeah, so that is the nice thing for clownfish. They are able to live in these anemones that would sting other predators trying to come in and eat them. So that gives them a little bit of extra protection. See that other juvenile horseshoe crab?
How big do horseshoe crabs when they're fully grown?
They can get really, really, really big. Like
Come here.
Full feet across.
What's your biggest one that you have?
Our biggest one is this one. It's about it's my hand width, which is like I don't know, 6 inches across, 5 inches, 6, 7. I don't know. It's pretty big. I'll have to get a ruler.
How do horseshoe crabs get water?
How do they what?
Like get water into their bodies?
Well, they live in the water, so that helps. I don't know about internal like filtration systems for separating out salt and things.
Yeah, so for a lot of the animals that live in the ocean, getting water is not so much of a problem because they're in the water, but then they have to get rid of all the extra salt. And so a lot of animals just kind of pee all the extra salt out. And so that's kind of what horseshoe crabs do too.
Yeah, I'll see if I can find. Horseshoe crabs make some pretty gross poop packets. Here's one.
Do you guys have any lobsters?
We do not have any lobsters on display, but we do have one lobster that lives in the back, and we would love to figure out a way to share that animal with our guests. The problem is that lobsters can be pretty aggressive, so we can't put it in the touch tank because then people wouldn't be able to stick their hands in.
Looks like Nova and Klonoa has a question.
I do. Do you have any crabs?
We don't currently have any crabs, no, but we have had spider crabs in the past. This is our lobster. We've had it from a very, very small size. It's now about a foot long.
Can lobsters be aggressive with other lobsters?
Yes, I believe that they can.
How do fish filter water?
How do fish what?
Filter water.
Through their gills, right?
Yep. So they're able to take in water through their gills. They can get out the oxygen that they need, as well as the hydrogen, and then get rid of all that waste, that salt that they don't want in their bodies. Here we go. Our whelk has spread out beneath its shell. It's hunting.
How does the snail hunt?
So you'll see sticking out of the tip of the shell there. It's got a sensory bit, and then it's moving along on its foot. So it's looking for prey. And like we said, it has that drilling mouth part, that radula, so it's able to drill through and get at meat inside.
Eat if it's so slow, so can't like prey see it coming.
So it's searching for things that are sitting also on the bottom, other snails and bivalves, so like clams or mussels. I also just fed a bunch of fish pieces into the tank, and so it might be just finding those lying around.
Are all the shells, like are some of them mussels and some of them just shells?
Yeah, so a lot of those are mussel shells. We have a bunch of moon snail shells in here. So our hermit crabs like to live in these. Then we have some mussels that have been eaten. We have little bits of clam shells. We have a lot of those very small periwinkle shells as well. And all of these are empty.
Does this snail ever eat like the hermit crab?
I've never seen a snail eat a hermit crab. When the hermit crabs don't have their shells, they're pretty vulnerable. So I have seen them get eaten by fish.
Like in the touch tank or just?
Yep. The smaller ones.
Cannibalistic.
Sorry?
Crabs cannibalistic.
They won't go after each other when they're alive. They might try to scavenge some meat off another dead crab.
All right, any last questions before we say goodbye to Emily and the touch tank?
How do hermit crabs camouflage?
How do they survive?
Camouflage. Like how do they camouflage themselves?
Camouflage, right. So they are able to sort of draw their limbs in under that shell and hide a little bit. If they're scared, they might do that. So, oops. Ours are all kind of big and brave, so they're not really going into their shells, but they can draw their whole body in to hide. Big hermit crab. All right, everyone. I have some other animals to feed. Thank you all for joining us. Tomorrow, we have a special activity for young kids, so kids 0 to 4 with their caregivers. So I hope some of you will be able to tune in for that at 10:30 tomorrow. You will need a bin of something sort of heavy that can be moved around. So that could be water, that could be flour, that could be dry rice or dry beans. I'll be using sand. So I hope you'll be able to join us for that. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you.